she's saying she thinks something is wrong for a while in the beginning, and they're like, no, this person is, the head of this, and they know exactly what they're doing,
Yeah.
and this person is very important,
It's
and
Boston Medical, Susan.
yeah.
It's Boston Memorial. How dare you? They would do that. You know what? They do that at New Hampshire. That's some New Hampshire stuff you're
Yeah,
suggesting.
they're basically saying you don't question the experts, and also like how could you accuse doctors of doing something wrong? Um and the what's the name of the bad guy at the
Oh,
end?
Dr. Harris. Isn't he
Dr.
talking about?
Harris.
Yeah, Dr. Harris.
Well,
The
he says something to her like there's all these moral questions in society and society won't answer them. So it's up to the experts and the doctors to answer them for society.
mm-hmm.
And he says that the hospital is the cathedral of our age. This feels very
Yeah.
much like Michael Crichton talking to the audience in that
Yeah,
moment.
and backstory on Crichton, he went to like medical school and was like, nah. As soon as he got in there, he was like, nope. And he's one of those guys where he's like, I'm clearly smarter than I've heard him speak. He's like, he's a good speaker, but you can tell he's like, I'm smarter than everybody. And in the same way that like, okay, like this is a weird comparison because we did Altered States, the movie on here a while back, and like Psy really reminded me of like the main guy in there, where he was just like, I hate this shit so much. Like, I hate this, like all this like science stuff we have to do. I just want to do like my super cool like sensory deprivation experiments and have like unlimited funding for it. Like, stop questioning me. Like, I know what I'm doing. In this way, this would be like if like Michael Crichton is like if I was like qualified to do that stuff, because I would just be trolling everybody. I would just be like, oh, really? Like, whatever. Like he was a English major for a while. Or I think he graduated, but he noticed his professor was like harsh to him. Like really, really harsh. Like, come on, man. Like, I know I'm not like a C student, like this is not a C paper. So what he did as an experiment was he literally just plagiarized a George Orwell paper and just sent it in. Like, George Orwell gets like so much, however you feel about Orwell, he's like a good writer, so he put that in, he sent it in and he got a B- on the thing, and the guy's like, oh, this guy's just a hater,
Yeah.
and so Crichton pretty much took this attitude to everywhere, and he was and this is all memory. I didn't know anything about this. So during like the Inconvenient Truth Al Gore era, he was like like one of the number one like Al Gore like haters that wasn't just like a politician, you know what I mean, or like the CEO of a company, or something. He was
Mhm.
kind of like when Al Gore was just doing this stuff, he was just like, dude, your models suck. They never come true. Like, he was like saying this all the time, like to Al Gore. And like, and again, on this podcast, like we have a pretty nuanced climate change take. Like, we think it's real, but it's not, it's just not gonna,
Yeah, there's
Al Gore's
something
not
weird
saving
about
you.
what's going
Yeah.
on
Al
there.
Gore is not going to save you. And his whole thing is he's like, I just hate the fear model. I hate the fear model. He's like, he tried to write a book about Chernobyl. Right, he was like, my next book's gonna be about like Chernobyl, or like kind of like a novelization of like Chernobyl. So he was reading it and he looked and he's like, dude, only 50 people died during the explosion. He's like, the way it was reported, it was like thousands,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And he's like, he would always take that mentality. He was like, I just want to find out what happened. That's all it is. Just tell me what happened. And it's like what we said, if you have like the facts on your side, you don't need to lie. Like, you don't need to sensationalize it. And with his climate change stuff, he was always saying, like, he's like, the same guy that's telling you that we just need to like invest all this money in green energy or green this, green that, whatever company. He's like, these are the people that don't care what's on the apple that's just sprayed with all this stuff. In fact, they have money on that, you know. And he was talking about endocrine disruptors and like on early TED Talk. Like, an early TED Talk is crazy. He's talking about like all this stuff that messes with people, like autism and stuff. And it's like, it just made me miss. I just wish we had him for this, because what I think would have happened for COVID with Michael Crichton is that I don't think he would have been pro lockdown, because I think he would have found the real numbers. Right. I don't know if that would have been his default position. Right. I don't think he would have been like politically just, no, I'm never anti-lockdown. I'm not sure about that. Just projecting. But I guarantee you, while he might not have been ardently anti-vax, he would have been anti-mRNA. 100%, because it's literally gene therapy.
Yeah.
And Jurassic, if you think about, he wrote Jurassic Park, and like Jurassic Park is kind of an allegory for gene therapy. Like it's if you think about it, or at least gene sequencing going wrong, right? I mean, that's kind of how it all happens. And it's just funny to see people like that not get erased from history, but just kind of like, he wrote some good books, you know. So that's just it's very interesting to hear him speak. I go down the Michael Crichton rabbit hole on YouTube. He's amazing. And I actually, it's one of those things where I tweeted out something about it, and a bunch of people who listen to the show were like, "Oh yeah, dude, where you been?" So it's got, maybe I'm late. You
Yeah,
know, like I'll tell you about George
maybe.
Clinton, you know, but like you could tell me about Michael Crichton. We can help each other. It's mutual aid, right? It's so I don't know. I'm fascinated with him. He passed away of cancer in at age 68, which is funny because if you watch the Charlie Rose interview from like 2007, he looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's really weird. Like
I watched the Charlie Rose
I love
interview.
that interview.
Which, side note, I can't believe they canceled Charlie Rose.
Dude,
Like,
he's the best.
for
Like
asking people on dates. Come
for
on.
just like kind of leaving his robe open a little bit. Like, no, it's like one of those things. Like you go to Charlie Robe's house and you're just like, all right, he's okay, Charlie. Like let's tighten the belt on the robe, you know? Like it's just like, it's not, you're not traumatized, like, you know what I mean? And like, dude, he's the best interviewer ever. He's so good. Like, and
I
he's
yeah,
there was
he's
something Michael Crichton said I thought that was so good, that I think Charlie Rose asked him, "Why are you so interested in science?" And Michael Crichton said it's because what has constituted social change for most of my lifetime is the products of scientific development.
Yeah.
And I thought that, I had never thought about it that way before, but I thought, yeah, that's why it is so important to understand what's going on in the fields of science, medicine, and technology, because basically all of the huge social and cultural changes in his lifetime and then now in our lifetimes are really driven by advancements or malfeasance in science and medicine.
yeah, and he's just like, his whole thing with climate change, he's like, look, it's warmer. Global warming, because it was global warming back then. That's like how it was actually. It was not climate change. They had to change that, like, because Al Gore's models, you know, like just didn't. I don't know if that's why they changed it, but it's climate change now. That's the new political term for it. So he had said, like, look, it's getting warmer. Like there's numbers that show that. He's like, but there's people that are predicting like 300,000 deaths here because of global warming and all that stuff. He goes, that's not happening. And he also has a really base take on secondhand smoke. He's like, he's like, that's not real. Like he was just like saying that on, like, I don't think it was on the Charlie Rose thing, but it was on this other, like,
Yeah.
he did these panels at like libertarian like college things where the kids could just like ask him questions. And he was just like, yeah, that's not real, by the way. He's like, the secondhand smoke. He's like, he goes, the reason I like hate it, because I thought my daughter was so lame. We walked by somebody smoking a cigarette and she pulled her shirt over her nose, and he's like, ugh, like that. And he was like, you serious? You know, like, and then he was like, that's not real. There's no studies to show that. He's like, that's just truth.org nonsense. It was just funny. Like he's good. I've gonna continue. I've never read a book of his. I'm gonna read the Andromeda Strain. I just ordered that. I think I'm gonna start that pretty soon. And then it's I found him. I found him. I'd say the Charlie Rose interview was an all timer, and it's like a year before he died. So I don't know. Do they have a cancer gun? I don't know. Just gonna ask. Is there such a thing? Is there like is there a way to give somebody cancer with like a, you know, the thing? I don't know. Just
I
asking a
think,
question.
yeah, I mean, I think that another thing I think he would have talked about during COVID was how it's bad for people
Fear.
to, yeah, be made to live in a state of constant fear, because in the video where he was talking about Chernobyl, he talks about how catastrophizing in the media hurts people. And when
Yeah.
people are told they're going to die, they do
Yeah.
actually die.
Yeah,
And
because
this is like
they said Chernobyl. He said basically like, and again, he even says, he's like, I'm not saying radiation doesn't do anything. He's like, but he was telling these people, you can't have, people were told you're not going to be able to have kids. People had kids. He's like, you know, they're like, you're gonna die. He's like, not everyone did. And he's like, just stop, like, just say what's happening. That's always his. That's his take. Which people try to peg that to a political ideology. It's like, no, I just want like. It almost comes down to like, what do you think of humanity? It's like most people think like, well, humanity wouldn't know what to do with the real data,
Yeah,
and
and
he's just
neither would
like,
you. But that's
yeah,
and
yeah,
neither would you. So let's
yeah,
just give it to everybody.
100%. Just let people just go with their gut. It's like, okay, first off, like, you know, now with Coma, I was looking up a little thing about the movie Coma, and I wanted to know. I just tried. There's not a lot about like him being interviewed about it. It actually made a lot of money. It was a $4 million budget, so pretty big for the time in 1978. Made 50 mil though, like big movie. I remember asking my dad. I like whenever I go into things, I ask my dad like, "Hey, do you remember this movie?" He goes, "Oh yeah, that was huge."
Yeah.
I guess it didn't really stick with any people, but like they're like, yeah, it was huge. Like it's like, yeah, that would never. That's science fiction, yeah. And then you know, he'd said about Coma was that he was like, there's way more like crazy stuff that was going to be put in there. He goes, but I just didn't want to sway people from ever seeing a doctor again, which is totally like what really happened. Is the film studios like, Mike, we're not that you can't put that in there. Like, you know, like because no one's gonna see a doctor ever again, because I can't imagine he truly cared about like you know, oh, people might never go to the doctor if I make this movie the way I want to make it, you know. And so that it's interesting. It's